and welcome to our Murfreesboro City School Board meeting.
We will prepare to stand for our pledge. I will yield to Dr. Gilbert, and while we're standing, we'll have a moment of silence.
At this time, I would like to ask Joseph Howard from the Discovery School to come please lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Good evening to all that are in attendance, and good evening to Dr. Gilbert. We'll now ask for an approval of the agenda.
So moved. Seconded.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Dr. Gilbert, communications.
Thank you. And I must announce that Joseph does need to leave for the ball game because Discovery's in a three-way tie for first place with Scales and with Bradley. So, Joseph, thank you for being here, and go help your team. Otherwise, Dr. Clark may.
He is one of the stars.
That's
of
I know.
this.
That's
Very
oh
important.
yes, and Dr. Clark told me that I had totally messed up their ball game because I asked him to be here.
And he's student council president. So.
Oh, there you go.
Well, we can let him go, I guess.
That's right. Although he will be up against my grandson, so we won't talk about that. So good luck tonight. There are several communications, and first I would like to introduce, though, Mr. Don Boyd, and he has two guests with him. Let me say this about Don. I really appreciate the team that you are seeing here tonight. The two folks that he will introduce, along with Tara Tiller, they are members of the Center of Regional Excellence from the Mid-Cumberland area. Don is actually the Strategic Planning Director for the Centers of Regional Excellence for Middle Tennessee. But they are here to present banners to Discovery School, so I'm going to ask Dr. Clark to come up, and also to Bradley Academy, so I'll ask Dr. Fowler to come up. But Don, I'm going to ask you to introduce your team, please, if you would come up at this time. And again, I can't tell you how much I appreciate the support of Don's team, Christy and David both, and also Tara. They have worked with us on a regular basis and are just real blessings to have among us tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. She said my name is Don Boyd, and I work for the Tennessee State Department of Education in our core centers, which are rebranded. You may be familiar with the term field service centers, which was what we were known as for several years, but now we're known as Centers of Regional Excellence, and we work out of the Mid-Cumberland office in Nashville and have the privilege of working with Dr. Gilbert in the Murfreesboro City school system. And we're very pleased to be here tonight to recognize two of your schools whose performance has placed them among the top 10% in the state of Tennessee, of very good achievement. And I'd like to introduce two of my colleagues. David Williams is our math coordinator in our office, and he's doing a lot of work with all the systems in our region. He's doing a great job for us, been working for us for a few months now. And then Christy Sutherland is the director of the Core Center in Nashville, and she's going to actually do the presentation tonight.
Chairman Wade and Board, thank you for the privilege of meeting with you today, Dr. Gilbert. It's a privilege to stand before you. I attended MTSU, so I have roots here. My husband graduated from MTSU. It's a beautiful city and a lot of potential. We enjoy working with Dr. Gilbert and her team of educators, and what is delighting is that the decisions that she makes and you make are in the best interest of students, and we appreciate that. Tonight we're here to honor two principals, Dr. Fowler and Dr. Clark, on their performance. However, I have to say they didn't get there alone. So I have to start with thanking the parents for what they do each and every day for their students, the students themselves that come to school to work and for their success, the hard work of teachers and their administrative teams. So we appreciate the work that goes on here. And I do have to say that There are other great things happening here at Murfreesboro City because you also had 5 other schools on the cusp of becoming reward schools, and that's to be commended. Here tonight, Dr. Clark, Dr. Fowler, thank you for a great job that you do each and every day. Thank you, Dr. Gilbert, for the students. Thank you. This is the banners that you'll hang up. Yes, they are. These are the banners. Hang in the schools.
Very nice. Right.
Yes, they are the same. Thank you so much. Thank you for what you do each day.
Again, Board, I want to thank these leaders. It's a tremendous privilege to work with them every day. Kim Fowler and Linda Clark represent the best of education, and I really appreciate what they do. I appreciate the work of their teachers, but it does start with the leader in those schools, and as you know, they do a tremendous job. So I really appreciate their work, and I appreciate the State Department being here tonight to recognize them, and again, appreciate your support so much. We could not do what we do if it weren't for you. So congratulations, colleagues, on this award, and to your teachers and your students, and of course the parents too.
I want to say something. I actually was discussing with my kids today that a little acknowledgement as a child goes a long way, and I think these schools being recognized, the students being recognized, the teachers being recognized, they'll remember that, and I really appreciate the State Department coming in and acknowledging our schools, and I do think it says a lot that we had so many schools on the edge, and if you would, could you tell who those schools are to everyone?
Yes, I will try to remember. We actually had, of the 10 schools tested, we had 2 that were recognized as reward schools, of course, Discovery and also Bradley. We had 3 schools, Mitchell Nelson, let me think. All right. Mitchell Nelson, and we had 3 schools that were recognized for growth. Mitchell Nelson was one of them. Case Lane was another one. Who's the other one? Christy? Black Fox, that's right, for growth. And right. Siegel and Scales were both recognized for their achievement. So you had 3 schools that were recognized for growth. Again, Mitchell Nelson, Black Fox, and Case and Lane. And then you had 2 that were recognized for where their achievement levels are. So and then you had 2 that were actual reward schools. And the only reason that the other 5 did not hit was because of gap closures. So they were there as far as the amount of growth and as the amount of performance. So I think that's pretty amazing that 7 out of 10 were there. Thank you. It's been a very long day. Really, again, the principal's doing an amazing job, and I do have to acknowledge the state for working with us because they have been here on several occasions. In fact, Tara will actually be back on Thursday working with data, so that's terrific. Corey Wells is here from Read to Succeed for the One Book program.
Good evening, and thank you for letting me have a couple of minutes today to tell you about the latest initiative from Read to Succeed. I know many of you are familiar with what we do, and we've been here in Rutherford County for 9 years now. And of course, we have programs like Reading in the Schools Day and Reading Rally, Unplug and Read, the Read to Be. But as Ms. Gilbert said, tonight we want to talk about our newest One Book selection. So tonight, I want to reveal to you that our newest One Book selection is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. It's a New York Times bestseller. Every year we partner with Linebaugh Library and a number of community partners to select a book that we encourage all of the community to read. The Fault in Our Stars is a story about how we all want to leave our mark on the earth. In this particular case, it's told from the perspective of a 16-year-old girl, Hazel Grace Lancaster, in a voice that one reviewer calls compulsively readable, and I would definitely agree with that. This book is about a hot boy and everyday heroes. It's about, oh, yeah, I've got to get your attention, right?
Teenagers.
Yes. It's about outgrowing swing sets and making memories. It's about art and philosophy, and it's about love and legacy. And unfortunately, it's also about dying too young. It is a story about teens with cancer, and I know that sounds like you go, oh, I don't really even want to read that. But if you give Hazel Grace a chance, you will be laughing and crying along with her, and you'll be celebrating with every breath that she takes and you take along with her on this journey. With the unfortunate reality of childhood cancer in mind, we have a unique partner this year in Clinton's Club, which is a Middle Tennessee organization that works to raise awareness of childhood cancer and support affected families. We're also partnering with the group Live for Tay and the family of the late Tay Filarimo, the Riverdale student and softball player who inspired so many recently in her efforts to fight and bring awareness to childhood cancer. The Washington Post called this book a tough, touching Valentine to the human spirit. And our One Book Committee agreed, and we're very much looking forward to the community reading this and engaging on it and really thinking about the specific challenges that childhood cancer brings to people among, our own community. We think that area adults and high school students will particularly be interested in this book. And so while many of the city school students may be not quite at their reading level, as leaders here in our community, I'm here to bring you a copy. I need a willing volunteer to take and then pass along. And for the rest of you, I have consolation bookmarks. And we really do appreciate your interest in what we're doing and in showing our community that literacy matters. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am so excited. My kids and I will read this together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I enjoyed the Hunger Games so much that you gave last year.
So hard to match last
That was, I think that y'all really started something there.
Thank you, Corey. Appreciate very much Read to Succeed's continuing work with our schools and with our community. At this time, I'd like to ask Ms. Kim Frank to come to the microphone, and I'd like to introduce her to you and to the community. She is the newly appointed Coordinator of Behavioral Support. And Kim, just give a brief background.
Brief.
Brief.
I've been with Murfreesboro City Schools for 2 weeks today. Not that I'm counting. Prior to that, I came to Murfreesboro City from Vanderbilt University. I was an educational consultant for the Treatment and Research Institute for Autism Spectrum Disorders, which is known as TRIAD. In that capacity, I did a lot of professional development specific to autism across the state of Tennessee and across the South. I also worked as the educational consultant for the Autism Treatment Network, which is a consortium of 17 research universities across North America that are looking at what can be done for autism as far as medical conditions and to come up with better ways to serve children medically. As part of that, I also worked in a lot of research projects with neurology, the Vanderbilt neurology team, because 67% of children who have autism also have some kind of sleep disorder. So wrote a sleep manual for parents, for teaching parents about sleep. Prior to that, for 23 years, I was a special education teacher and worked with children from 3 to 22. Children who had really significant global delays, all the way through gifted over that time period. So, long time. But I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate you being here. And you'll remember that Tanya Hobbs, when she left us, we shifted that position more toward behavior, so we're very, very glad to have her here. And she has been here and has been working. We'll be doing quite a bit of teacher professional development also.
I just wanted to welcome Miss Frank to Murfreesboro City Schools, a 2-week baptism there. But what exactly will Miss Frank's responsibilities be?
As you know, we really are taking a comprehensive approach to behavior, and she'll be heading that up. She has already worked with some of our schools as far as behavior. What you'll be seeing now is some pretty intensive professional development that will be happening. But she basically will be helping our teachers with being more effective with students who have behavioral issues. Obviously, she has a real expertise in autism. And what we know is that autism is recurring on an increasing basis, not only with our children, but across the United States. So she brings a level of expertise that really our folks have been asking for quite a while. And we're very excited about having her here. She has, in preparation for the MTSU basketball game, for example, she has already sent out some ideas for some of the children that might have some difficulty with noise of how to help address that. So our principals have already begun to use her, and again, she will be doing some pretty extensive professional development over the next couple of months.
And what about the children in the alternative classrooms? Will she be working with those
She
children?
already has been, yes.
Okay.
Yes, anything that's related with behavior. She has that knowledge. She actually is working on her national board, behavioral therapist. There's some title there, but so it's not just autism that she'll be working with, but she'll be
That's
also
really
working
kind
with
of
other
what I'm
areas.
talking about, yeah.
Will she also be working with the teachers to be able to help teach them, aside from the behavioral part?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's what you'll see. She's already working with some children and some teachers specifically, but I'm really interested in her giving all of our teachers a broad knowledge of behavior and some strategies that can be used in every classroom. So not only will she be working with what we call that first tier, but then she also will be working with that second and third tier with the children that have some unusual behaviors, and our teachers helping them with some of those difficult behaviors in the classroom. What we have seen in Murfreesboro and the approach we have taken is first to make sure that our instruction is solid. So we're there now. Now what we're looking at is really the classroom and environment and making it better for teachers and for children. I would like to congratulate the recipients of the City Schools Foundation grants. We did have 30 grants that were given out. There were $57,000 in grants that were handed out, and you do have an attached list. Certainly appreciate the relationship that the City Schools Foundation and the school district have now. It's a remarkable relationship, and appreciate very much what they bring to the school district. They are about helping children, and so we appreciate that. Again, there were about 30 grants, and a total of $57,000 given out. In that note, I would like to let you know that our Excellence in Education celebration that was scheduled for February the 1st has been moved to February the 8th. There was a chamber event, and we do not want to conflict with that, but that will be honoring Dr. Susan Andrews, and that will be February the 8th, and you will be receiving more information about that. Speaking of grants, we did receive information today that we have 13 teachers and one assistant principal who will be receiving grants from the Business Education Partnership, and I believe that you have those grants also listed at your desk. Again, we just received information about that today, but wanted to let you know and let the public know about that. We appreciate very much the support of the Business Education Partnership and certainly the support of our City Schools Foundation. I wanted to share with you tonight some information about inclement weather and also with our public. We try to make the decision if there is snow or some other weather that causes us to close schools. We try to make those decisions as early as possible. We do think that it's critically important for our children to be in school as many days as possible. We like to have those decisions made by 6 o'clock the night before, but that's not always the case. I know that last year we had some situations and the year before where it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and I just have to ask the parents to understand that, because sometimes you expect that snow to melt with the rain and it doesn't, or there may be sidewalks that are not cleared, although Our maintenance department does a great job with that, but sometimes it may just be right at the front of a school like Siegel where the sun is not shining there and it just isn't off the grass enough and off the streets enough to ensure safety, and that's our first interest. But typically what happens with that is I'm in touch with transportation, in touch with emergency management. Several times have called even dispatch at the Murfreesboro Police Department. And of course, Larry Williford is kind of the guru of that. He has all kinds of equipment that will let us know what the temperature is of the streets, what the temperature is of the air, and so we have to give it our best shot. But again, I can tell you I'll try to make those decisions as early as possible, but I can't always guarantee that they're going to be made the night before. But that's kind of the procedure that we do follow. And so if you have any questions about that, I'll be happy to answer them.
I know that you won't contact parents at 3 in the morning, but what approximate time would a message go out?
If it's going to come out in the morning, then our buses last year were rolling, and I'm assuming this year too, although I haven't asked them about what time, but usually 5:45, 5:30 is pretty much the deadline for that. And so they're going to get the call probably about 5 o'clock in the morning. And I apologize, there's some people that may not be awake at that time, but there are others that are already getting ready for their children to go to school. So 5 o'clock is about when that call is going to come if it doesn't come the night before. Usually I really try to make it the night before, but for whatever reason, the last couple of years, we've had instances where it's had to be an early morning call. And last year there was even one I know where I was riding on one of the roads and the snow was there and I was calling the bus. They were saying, Linda, we got to have a decision. And I said, okay, I can see tracks. We're going. But it is important for our children to be in school, and it's important also for our parents that are working parents to have information as early as possible. So that's really the way that works. And I appreciate the partnership that we have with the police department, that we have with emergency management, that we can call and say, what are you seeing out there on the roads? What are you thinking? So any other questions about that, I'll be happy to answer. Sure.
It's my understanding that Twitter will be used for those.
We're using texting now to those accounts.
Not Twitter.
We will be using that.
Twitter, yes, Twitter. Okay.
By January. And I'm hoping we don't have any snow. In fact, I'm hoping we don't have snow, but that's not what I'm hearing. I know. I keep wanting to change that.
Things change when you get older.
That almanac just keeps saying other things. I don't know why it does that. But we will report, of course, on WGNS and City Channel 3 and also the local newspapers and the Nashville stations and listen for Murfreesboro City Schools. That's the key to that. We'd like to thank the General Mills Foundation. They have given us a $10,000 grant. That will be used for an indoor and outdoor physical activity and learning area at Franklin Heights. And, of course, our thanks to Murfreesboro Housing Authority for their continuing partnership there. And also to Patsy Nolan, who's the executive director. She has been a tremendous partner with us for several years. And I know when Mr. Lyles talked with her about this outdoor area, they were very welcoming of that. And I'd also like to give a little bit of a shout out to Chris Griffith, who works with our engineering department. They have adopted that site over there and have done amazing work, and really that department has given us great guidance there. So we're very excited about receiving that grant from General Mills and for the outdoor play area that we'll have over there for the children in the Franklin Heights area.
Ms. Phillips has a comment.
Sure.
I know that's going to be very much enjoyed by the children over there. And I also want to shout out to General Mills Foundation because they are a faithful friend to Murfreesboro City Schools year after year after year. And I appreciate their consistency in supporting some of our programs. And when we get a grant like this, I know typically, we have a reporting back of how things are going. Do we ever write a letter of thanks?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. I figured we did, but I just want to make absolutely sure.
Already been done.
Okay.
Yes, and we do. And by the way, at the center, tutoring is going along well, so GED and some other exciting things over there, and I encourage you to go over there and participate in that. Our thanks to Amazon for the donation of 40 Kindles that will be used district-wide with our exceptional children, and I know that Patty sent out an email today about that, so I know the schools are excited about those Kindles coming to the exceptional children that we have in our schools. Our thanks also to Oasis Church. They provided 500 food bags for our students at Hobgood the day before Thanksgiving, and we'll be doing the same thing before Christmas break. And also, I'd like to thank New Vision Baptist Church for their donation to the Backpack Food Program. We have some faith-based organizations that are consistently helping us, and certainly Oasis Church and also New Vision are two of those. So we really appreciate their work with us. We'd also like to thank our schools, because what they have done is, for one of their home ball games, they have had a canned food drive. And so they have been collecting foods, and that will go to the Rutherford County Food Bank and also to Greenhouse Ministries, who are very helpful with our families that do need additional food. So that's a tremendous partnership, and I appreciate our schools doing that for our food bank and for Greenhouse. We'd like to congratulate Hobgood art teacher Dee Dee Parda. She won first place in watercolor at the Polk County Art Show in Cedartown, Georgia. And I talked to Dee Dee the other day, and I said, I want to see your work, because I didn't realize that she was as, of course, I know she's talented, but I think a lot of times we see with our art teachers, we see their work and the evidence in our children and don't realize what a gift they have on their own. So congratulations to Dee Dee. She's a tremendous teacher. And also thank you from Mitchell Nelson Schools to Petty Officer Stephen Dowdy and his U.S. Navy recruiting office at Old Fort Parkway. They have adopted the Mitchell Nelson Schools. And speaking of Mitchell Nelson, I'd like for Kelly Jones to come to the microphone, please. This afternoon, Kelly was given the first civilian award by the Murfreesboro Police Department for her Cards with Cops programs. And so I want you to see Kelly and want to put her on television because I want Kelly, and she said, Linda, please don't make me talk. So I'm going to make her talk, of course. But Kelly, would you talk a little bit about your Cards with Cops? Because I think that today at the police department, we saw how meaningful that program was for our police officers, in fact, all the employees of the police department. Would you explain to the board and to the public a little bit about how your Cards for Cops programs work?
The past 3 years, my classes, my fifth grade classes, have been making birthday cards for all the employees of Murfreesboro Police Department. And I thought that my students needed more opportunities to give rather than just receive, and at the same time to acknowledge the importance of that department for our community. And the letters and notes and visits that we've received in the classroom over the last few years have been just amazing. Just some of the letters will make you cry. I went back today. I've kept every note card that they've sent, and I went back in my file today and started reading them again. And you could tell that they were very touched by what the students had done. And I'm very honored. I don't feel worthy of it, but I'm very honored that they thought of me and my classes for doing that. We've really enjoyed it, and I didn't have a chance to say thank you to Linda, to Dr. Gilbert, because I talked to her about this before she even came back to Murfreesboro, because I wanted my students to do something, and I knew if anybody could come up with a great idea, it would be Linda Gilbert. And so I wanted my students to do something, but she's the one that helped put it into place, and I appreciate that. It's been a great thing, and the employees have increased so much that I've actually handed it over to our ESP and Leslie Walker, and I really appreciate her doing that. So I gave it up just a couple of months ago, but it's still at Mitchell Nelson, and we're still continuing to do it because it really has made an impact, and it was very special to hear a lot of those stories today, and I appreciate it.
And Kelly, what Kelly did is her students actually made handmade birthday cards, and actually packs of birthday cards, and sent to all the employees. And so I explained to Kelly that sometimes it's the things that we think that are little that really are big to other people. And so what your children did with your leadership was really big and made a huge difference to the police department. And I appreciate Chief Grisman and the officers recognizing that today. So it's very special that the first civilian award given by the police department went to you and to Murfreesboro City Schools. So thank you for representing us so well and for representing Mitchell Nelson so well.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you.
Thank you.
And what a dynamite lesson for your kids, too. You know, what a learning opportunity. Hats off and congratulations. And it doesn't surprise me that Dr. Gilbert had a finger in that pie. You just really appreciate both of y'all.
A couple of other announcements. We are going to be in the Christmas parade, in the Murfreesboro Christmas parade, and it's getting interesting
Murph
because
gonna be there?
not only is Murfreesboro City Schools will you all be there, I hope, but Mitchell Nelson will also be there. They have told me that they plan to have a float, and in fact, I think they've learned a dance that they're going to do too. So this is becoming a little competitive out there. But we will have our children will be walking
have
as
to
last
dance
year.
too?
I don't think we have to. We're not mentioning dancing. We may not even be mentioning walking this year, who knows. But I do appreciate the work of the art teachers, and also ESP has been working with that. I know Mr. Lyles has been working with that, but I do think it's exciting that one of our schools, and also Ms. Trail has been working with that, but I think it's interesting that our schools are excited about being in the Christmas parade, which I think is kind of cool. The other announcement, of course, is on December 4th, our children will be going to the MTSU ball game, and I wanted to talk with you a little bit about this. For many of our children, this will be the first time that they have the opportunity to be on a college campus. And what we know is what happens in the elementary school makes a huge difference the rest of their lives. And so I think that MTSU has given us this opportunity. It's not costing the district anything for us to get in the game. In fact, they've moved the game to 11 o'clock so that we can be there. I think our teachers and our administrators are excited. I hope our parents are excited. But again, we see this as a real learning experience for our children. Some of our children and teachers will be touring the campus that morning. Our leadership team in instruction, they have already been sending out math tasks that are Common Core tasks to every grade level so that they are working with not only athletics but information about MTSU. Every day there are blue facts that go out to our teachers and to our principals, and our teachers can use that to develop some instruction. So it really is becoming an instructional tool, and that's exactly what we intended it to be. So we're very excited about that, and hope that you can join us. But I'm very appreciative of MTSU's partnership. Again, the work that our outreach team and our communications team have done with them. But I think it's pretty special when you can say that a university, a major university, in fact, the largest undergraduate university in the state, and a school district can join together to do something that's really, really positive for children. And so I appreciate your support and the support of the parents, and particularly the support of the teachers and the administrators, because we are looking at it as a learning trip and a field trip. So I wanted to announce that, and the game starts at 11 o'clock on December the 4th. And those are your communications.
Did you say that's December the 4th?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell has a question.
You said this was at no cost to our system?
That's right. Not even the popcorn or the water.
Wow.
Buses?
Do we all get pop? Oh, I guess y'all will all get pop.
Mr. Campbell, I think you have a job to do that day.
I just encourage you, Dr. Gilbert, to be calm that day.
Mr. Campbell, I am always calm.
Ready for camera on?
Yeah, we'll put her on the kitchen cam.
I think I'll probably have potty patrol that day.
Thank you.
Arrange that.
If there are no more communications, then we'll entertain consent items. If you looked at those, is it anything that's any discussion or anything that needs to be taken out? If not, we'll entertain a motion for the approval.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Action items?
Your first action item is the approval of the 2013-2014 calendar, and let me say that I appreciate the work of the advice, certainly, of the principals, but also the advice of the teachers. There are a couple of things that I'd like to point out about the calendar. One is that we try to stay as close to the county calendar as possible, but we did think that it's important for our teachers and our students to be out as close to Memorial Day as possible. So you'll notice on the calendar that the last half-day for students is the Friday before Memorial Day. We are starting with our half-day on Monday, August the 5th, and the county will have their registration day on Thursday, so that is one difference. And then our first full day will be on Tuesday, August the 6th, and the county's first full day will be on Monday, August the 12th. But we believe we're close enough that it really will not impact our attendance. One new item that you do have this year is that we have scheduled a day for parent-teacher conferences. One will be in the fall on October the 21st. The second will be March the 24th. We are hoping that that will give a day for our parents to come to school, and this is something that our teachers have asked for a few years, and I thought that it was time that we did this. And so we may not get all of our teachers, all of our parents that day. There may still have to be some parent conferences outside of that, but I'm certain that the teachers will try to do that. But we think that it's a convenience and for our teachers, but mainly for our parents to be able to come during the day. And so you have that on your calendar, and that is something new this year.
Now, my concern is that many parents work and are not going to be able to make those parent-teacher conferences during the day. Are there hours scheduled in the evening and early in the morning?
We will be looking at that, at what time that day starts, what time the work day starts, and so I think it's entirely possible. In fact, we've already talked with our principals a little bit about that and with some teachers about that, about trying to start the day later or start it earlier so that we would be able to get both shifts.
Because I really feel that, I just really feel that's very important.
Right.
Just many parents just would not be able to make it during the day.
That's right.
So.
And I think that realistically, just like when we have it, the 2-week spread, and it's always late afternoon, we still have instances where we have parent-teacher conferences during the day, and I think that may be the case here. But if we can get the majority on that day, I think it would be good. And then our teachers are very committed to meeting with parents, as you know. And so I think that they would not expect to see everyone that day, but at least it will give a shot at trying to see as many people as possible. And this way the parents know early what day that will be, and I think that's a real advantage too.
And I just kind of have a follow-up comment. I think it's unrealistic, though. I want to make sure, I appreciate what you're trying to do, and at the same time, I think it's unrealistic to ask the parent to take a day off work to schedule this for a 15-minute conference, and they'll miss a whole day of work.
Right.
That would be very hard for many parents. And so, I know our teachers are committed to meeting with the parents, and I hope that they will be flexible, realizing that many parents aren't going to be able to make that, 8 to 3
Sure.
window. So.
Okay, Ms. Renier and then Ms. Smith.
My comment is kind of echoing what pardon me. I'm so sorry, bad cold. What Dr. Gilbert has just said, that if this calendar is published as soon as possible and goes out to every parent at the beginning of the year, they will be notified immediately as to when parent conferences will be, and probably have a schedule at that time that maybe it's going to be 11 to 7 or 10 to 6 or whatever it's going to be, so that they can make arrangements, whether it be their lunch hour or whatever. If a parent knows far enough in advance, I think that they'll make every effort to be there, as many as possible. Having come from the classroom, we try, and working on the calendar year after year, we tried so many years to get this put into place, and I know the teachers are going to be extremely grateful for this. It's very difficult to go through 2 weeks of parent conferences and then still be at your best for the children each and every day when you're not going home until 7 or 8 o'clock at night because you're trying to fit in those parents late into the evening. So I know that this will be a real boost to the teachers, and I think that the parents, once they get used to this, will certainly be able to accommodate this. I believe the county only does one day during their conference time as well. I don't think that they spread it out over 2 weeks like we've done in the past. So.
And again, I think that we're looking at this day may not be 8 to 3, so that we do get
Right.
those shifts. And again, I think that what you will find is teachers, I know some teachers were having conferences at 6 o'clock in the morning. I think you'll still see some of that, because I think there may be some parents, but I think if we let the parents know ahead of time, if we make sure that the hours are such that we can swing those shifts, I think that will be helpful. But then I think our teachers would expect, because they're very committed to meeting with those parents, particularly both of them, though, because the first one, you're starting the year off, that's where they get the report cards. The last one, you're talking about the progress throughout the year. So I think they would expect that you're not going to be able to get everybody that day, just like you don't get everybody from 3 until 7 if you're having that for those 2 weeks. So I think they will, I have no question they'll accommodate.
I think another issue, too, is the safety issue, because when we did parent conferences over the 2-week period of time, that kind of dictated that an administrator, pardon me again, an administrator needed to be in the building. Sometimes it was a safety concern that a teacher was maybe alone until 7 or 8 o'clock, and the principal might be up here in the office, and this teacher's way over here in another wing of the building, and who would know if there's a problem? So it is an issue, and I think that this is just a great step in the right direction. I think everybody will really like it.
I have 2 comments. I respect what Ms. Renier says. Certainly, as an experienced teacher, it does. What Ms. Phillips says does hit me, because we have all these half days that the parents are already having to take care of child care for all of the half days too, and then go ahead and have child care for the teacher conferences. But if this is what the teachers have been pushing and wanting, I think that we need to do that. But I am a bit concerned about the parents that work, and we have all these half days. And the other thing is that, the questions are, how are we spacing out these half days? They seem so close sometimes to other holidays that we've just been off. Is that because we're being aligned with the Rutherford County, or?
Yes, that's exactly it. In fact, we did not construct this calendar until we got their half day. So we are absolutely aligned with Rutherford County. And Rutherford County will be having their parent-teacher conferences sometime in October. They have a half discretionary day that they take there, and also in February. But our half days for our PLCs are absolutely aligned with the county.
Okay, and with that said, why are we not starting the same days that they are?
Because they're going after Memorial Day.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Phillips and then Mr. Campbell.
I would just be very interested in some follow-up data after these meetings next year to see what kind of turnout we had, what time of days parents were able to come. I know that, in an ideal world, people will be able to take their lunch hour, but if you work in Nashville or, Lebanon or somewhere else, you can't come during your lunch hour. So I would be very interested in some kind of follow-up information as to what our parent involvement or engagement was with this change.
Sure.
To see if it's I know it sounds good for the teachers. Let's make sure it works for the families too.
And I think that you make a really good point, because I think what we may need to do when we look at and talk with principals and talk with teachers and get the hours on this is to look at when parents came this year and then try to match that, which would make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Mr. Campbell.
This same system of parent conferences has worked, as somebody said, in the county for years, and it has always been welcomed by everybody. Ms. Renier makes a very good point pertaining to those teachers having conferences after the 3 o'clock hour, and they're on one end of the building, and some of our buildings are large as far as school plant goes, and it's difficult sometimes to know whether or not the parent coming in is going to be excited or irate or whatever the case may be. But I like this where we are providing all day long, and if I'm not mistaken, and somebody's been around here maybe as long as I have, I think years ago in the city system, we had parent conferences during the day. Seems to me like when I was at Bradley, we did, because I remember Mr. Gaither always coming in and getting off or whatever he needed to do, and a lot of parents did, and they liked it. They really did like it. So it's something to try. Change is a little difficult for a lot of people, but let's hope that this works.
Okay, if we've had all of our questions asked and answered, I'll entertain a motion for the approval. of this calendar?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Approval of board policies?
Okay, the first policy that you have before you tonight for first reading is Board Policy B05, School Board Meetings. The additions to this policy are based on a new state statute that allows participation by board members electronically, and it's limited to certain situations when board members can participate electronically. It is in situations that are due to family emergencies, board members' military service, or the board member is going to be absent from the meeting due to work, but that absence must be a work-related absence that is outside of the county. And there are some restrictions on using the electronic attendance. First, there has to be a quorum of the board physically present before a board member can participate electronically. And before the board member can participate electronically, the chair must visually identify the board member, so we would have to use technology similar to Skype or FaceTime, something of that nature. And if it is a work-related absence from the board meeting, that has to, as I said, be an absence from the county, and the board member must give the chair 5 days' notice prior to the meeting, and it can only occur twice a year. If it's a family emergency, that again is limited to occurring twice a year, and that would include hospitalization of a member or death or hospitalization of a member's relative. And there's a list of the various degrees of relationship that are covered. And this, as I said, is based on a state statute that was passed this past legislative session.
Mr. Campbell has a question, Ms. Baker.
Ms. Baker, I noticed on the work-related absence, you've got to give the chair and director 5 days' notice. And what about the other situations?
For a family emergency or military absence, there does not have to be a certain amount of notice time.
Okay.
It's only those for work-related work-related absence, and that's to eliminate the possibility that someone just decides, oh, I think I'll work late tonight and participate electronically. They wanted to make sure that it was a true need, a true need for the member to participate electronically.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Smith?
Am I missing it, or is there an attendance policy at all?
No.
Okay.
If there are no other questions or comments, I will entertain a motion for the approval.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay, the next policy that you have before you tonight for our first reading is Board Policy STU 35, Tobacco-Free Schools. This policy has recently been approved by the board, but there is one tweak that we have seen that needs to be made. It's there on line 6. It deals with prohibiting smoking within 50 feet of a designated school bus stop. That has apparently been an issue that needs to be addressed in the policy.
Are there any questions for Ms. Baker? Okay. Seeing that there are no questions or comments, we'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. There's a second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay, the last policy before you tonight on first reading is Board Policy STU 44, Care of School Property. The revisions to this policy are incorporating the need to notify the maintenance department when a principal or employee finds some sort of damage to school property. And you'll see those additions in lines 7 through 9. And it also adds a section that allows a minor or parent to do voluntary work similar to light-duty physical labor of pulling weeds, washing windows, etc., if they cannot compensate the school system for any damage that was caused by the student.
Since I see no questions or comments for this one, is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Reports and information.
Your first report is the audit report. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Anderson, but when I do that, I also want to acknowledge Ms. Golina Bill. I know that Mr. Anderson will probably acknowledge her, but I want to do that personally and really express to her how much I appreciate the work that she does for this district and for the children.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. I also would like to acknowledge Golina Bell. She is the finance manager for the district. She's over keeping up with all the numbers and all the money that runs through our system, and she does a wonderful job. Also want to acknowledge the people in the central office and the finance department. We have Beth Prater, Becky Sally, Marissa Loomis, Rachel Blum, Joe Lassiter, Dina Thomas, and Pam Holden, who works with all the support areas. I just wanted to get their names out there as well, since they work behind the scenes, and really no one ever sees these ladies and how hard they all work. We also want to thank all of the school secretary, bookkeepers in every one of our schools. We have 11 of them who work consistently to do the right things with the money and protect the interests of the school system. So with all that said, I'd like to now introduce Mr. Rich Lockwood from Crossland Associates. He is the lead auditor for the audit team that came and did our financial audit that ended on June 30th. So, Mr. Lockwood, sure.
Chair Wade, board members, thank you for selecting Crossland Associates as your outside auditors. I'm delighted to be the lead on the audit engagement. I've been involved for the past 5 years. One of the first audit engagements I started with our firm. And so the fantastic thing is that I have very little to report. Hats off goes to management for that. Before you, I've given you 2 books. One that's thin, skinny in color, that has required communications that professional standards have placed on us to communicate with you. The second is the final audited financial statements for June 30, 2012 school year ending. If you don't mind, I'd like to run through that required communications first. Similar to what you've seen in the past, we are required to perform our audits in accordance with professional standards, both issued by the AICPA as well as government auditing standards, and then OMB Circular A133. I will do everything I can to make this exciting, but it is accounting. I'm so sorry. But we're responsible for performing our audit in accordance with professional standards. Management is responsible for the fair presentation of those financial statements. On page 2 of your book, toward the bottom, I've got some discussion about what management is responsible to do. In addition to the fair presentation of the financial statements, it's selecting. You got a question?
A bit louder.
Oh, certainly. Management selects appropriate accounting policies that are applicable to the district. Those are complete. They're as thorough as they need to be. There's not unnecessary disclosures in the financial statements. Moving on to page 3, financial statements include certain estimates made by management. Those are things that highlight audit risk to my firm because management then has some discretion. We evaluate those estimates from year to year. Consistent with the prior year, those estimates are the useful lives of capital assets, and then the property taxes, both receivable and deferred. We've evaluated those for reasonableness. We've sent confirmations, received those back with respect to the property taxes, and believe that the amounts in the financial statements are, in fact, reasonable. Delighted to report that we encountered no difficulties in performing our audits for this past fiscal year. We identified no audit adjustments in the financial statements. We send confirmations. I think you know that. We send confirmations. We inspect documents. We inquire with personnel inside the organization as well as sometimes at the state level. I had a conversation this year in that regard with someone at the state. And anything we asked for was provided to us. There wasn't a single document that we requested that could not be made available for our evaluation. We had no disagreements with management in performing our audit. Management's required to make certain representations. This is something that we put in the file that management represents that they're responsible for various things. It's a very long list. And when you can't sleep, please go there. It can help. Those are included in attachments, in Attachment B, Appendix B, rather. Moving on to the page 4, we identified no instances of fraud as a result of our audit procedures. To our knowledge, no one within management has consulted with other outside accountants other than our firm. Sometimes organizations seek a second opinion. To our knowledge, no such inquiries were made with other accountants. We have, Mr. Anderson and I dialogue throughout the year about accounting matters, questions, new developments. Works fantastic. It makes my job a little bit easier toward the end of the year when we begin performing our audit to be in the loop. None of those conversations had anything to do with whether or not we were selected, as they were not contingent on, with respect to our retention. Final matter in the required communications relates to our management letter. On the facing page, on page 5, this is what they call the super clean management letter. There were no significant deficiencies, no material weaknesses, certainly, and we had no other comments that we thought were important to bring before you. So again, hats off to management, to the accounting and finance team for making our life fantastically easy in as much as an audit can be. If I can direct your attention now to the audit financial statements. Yes, ma'am.
Is this what was in the email?
Should have been, yes. I
Okay.
did.
You know, it would have been helpful in maybe next year for us, for me personally, to get a hard copy of this before the meeting. It's just easier to have it in your hand and look it over. And I really appreciate this thing copy. I've never had anything quite like this document before, and I found that very, very nice. So.
In your audited financial statements, and I say your financial statements because they are yours. I'm delighted to say they're yours. They're not mine. But can I direct your attention toward the very back to page 59? This is a summary. It's called a schedule of findings and question costs. It's not really the best description for it, but that's just the required term. This is a summary of what we did. The different levels of assurance, the different types of procedures that we perform. Specifically, within your financial statements, at the very front, there's our opinion on the financial statements. Toward the back, after all the schedules, there's an opinion on compliance and internal controls in accordance with Yellow Book, government auditing standards. Finally, there's a report on compliance and internal controls with respect to your federal financial assistance, what's known as your single audit or your A133 audit. The information on page 59 runs down in that same order. And so if I can highlight some things there, with respect to our audit on the financial statements, our opinion on those financial statements is that they are unqualified. We had no qualifications. That's the best report. It's consistent with the report that we've issued for the past few years. And so, again, it's the highest level of report, no findings. I mentioned a moment ago, but this summarizes as well. We had no internal control weaknesses that we identified, either significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. We identified no noncompliance, either with state requirements or with federal requirements. In substance, on page 59, that's all there is to report. If I can ask you to turn the page just one. Here's a list of your major federal programs. In the prior year, Murfreesboro City Schools had 6 major federal programs that we were required to test. Most of that is because of the stimulus money, known as ARA, or recovery funds. Each of these 3 groups of programs identified there, both a special education cluster for IDEA, State Fiscal Stabilization Fund, Race to the Top, and then the Federal Education Jobs Program. Each of those was tested last year. We had no findings. Again, this year we had no findings in that regard. Summarized at its deepest level then on page 61, there's a list of current and prior year findings, and it says none in each of those 3 cases. So with respect to the results of our audit procedures, we had no findings. We noted no instances of fraud. We had no audit adjustments. We're here, our report is dated 3 weeks earlier than it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
Management, Ms. Bell and her team had a software conversion effective July 1st, 2012. They were still able to help us get the information that we needed to complete our audit timely. Love to be here before Christmas. I don't know that we'll try to beat Thanksgiving next year. We'll see. But with respect to the financial statements themselves, I won't bore you further by running through the details of them. The information in there should be consistent with what you've expected from the reports that you've received throughout the year. But I do want to field any questions that you might have. As you're flipping questions, I just want to highlight one significant change that is reflected in the financial statements that is completely outside your control is what's called OPEB. On page 42, there's a bunch of fantastic information about your other post-employment benefits. This information comes from the state, and it's based on several assumptions at the state level. The state got more specific in 2012 than it had in the prior year or in previous years. As a result, the number changed significantly from the prior year, and because it changed so significantly, we contacted personnel at the state to talk with them about, does that make sense? We received confirmation directly from the state, but does it make sense? And the belief was, yes, it does. Murfreesboro City Schools is one of several organizations, tens, 20s, hundreds possibly, participating in the program. If Murfreesboro City Schools had hired an actuary to come out and evaluate specifically Murfreesboro City Schools, very specific, detailed information, the amounts reflected in the financial statements might be different, and they might be materially different. So that being the case, it is an estimate, but it's not an estimate that management's making. It's an estimate that's being provided by the state of Tennessee. As such, it's included as a disclosure, as well as it's a certain amount falls into your operations, not in your day-to-day operations, but purely from an external financial reporting standpoint. In the future, any pension obligations, these OPEB obligations will be hit in the financial statements. We'll see if the standards setters back off from that. They haven't done that in the private world, and so we're inclined to think that they're going to place that upon the not-for-profit and governmental organizations as well. But when that's effective, we'll let you know. Certainly be in dialogue with Mr. Anderson and others within the organization, making sure you know what the standards are, and so we can, if there's information that you need to know sooner rather than later, we'll be sure that that's forwarded to you.
Ms. Phillips.
Mine's not a question, it's a comment. I want to thank you for coming and sharing your time tonight. I think it's important for the public to hear directly from you that we have a clean audit. And thank you to Ms. Galena Bell and Mr. Anderson for your hard, day after day, consistent work in our finances. So and to help us get this year after year to have a clean clean audit, and I think that's very important. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And of course, you.
Thank you.
Okay, you have a personnel update and your monthly revenue and expenditure report, your attendance report, Mr. Anderson.
Yes, the monthly revenue expenditure report, we're at the 33.3% of the fiscal year. Last year, this year at this time, you can see our net income is minus $3,356,000. Last year at this time, we were minus $5,183,000. So cash flow-wise, that's very positive. And I would be remiss if I didn't make the announcement this time that please shop local this holiday season and forever so we can keep the money here in the system. So thank you very much for the little advertisement of shopping local for our local merchants. Thank you. The overall revenue picture on the next page, our year-to-date revenues are up at our projected levels. So we so far seem to be hitting target on what we had anticipated the increase in revenues would be. As you know, they lag behind until sales tax and property tax do come in, and that comes in strongest after the first of the year. The next page is our expenditures, and we are, again, doing well in that at 28.5% based on the 33.3% where we should be. So revenue expenditures are a little bit behind, which is a good thing, which is the reason our cash flow is a better position than it was last year at this time. Does anyone have any questions on our overall finance report this month? Okay, the next report is the attendance report of our school system and enrollment report. We again are up this past month. We're 230 students over last year at the end of the school year, and we are 79. I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. I'm sorry. We're 252 students above where we were last year at the end of the year, and 101 students above our budgeted amounts. So when we do receive anticipated growth money, we're up over 3.4, 3.5% in growth over last year. That will allow us to participate in the growth pool from the state, and so that revenue will hit our financials sometime probably in February. We don't get it until late January. And that'll hit at that time for about half of the money. The rest of it comes in May or June.
What do you estimate that amount to be, Mr. Anderson?
If we just take it on the face of the pool is $30 million, and it's split amongst all of the systems in the state. So we never know. If we just take our average amount of students, it would be at least $400,000.
Yay!
Yeah, well, we're kind of hoping that's bigger, but.
I'm sure we can find something to do with it.
Yeah.
She didn't hear any of this report over there. So enrollment-wise, we're doing very well. Our PTR ratio in our K through 3 grades is at 19.10, and in 4 through 6, it's 20.91. So our district average is 19.75 students per teacher, which is a wonderful average. Our attendance percentage this month is 95.8%, and that's good. I saw that some school system in Tennessee closed today because of illness, so to see that kind of number is really good for our area to have that. We are watching very closely. Irma Siegel is at 20.46 in its K through 3 configuration. The state allows up to 20.49 before we will have to hire another teacher for that school if that grows. Siegel is pretty stable most of the year, so we may or may not have to hire a teacher. But once we hit over 20.49 under state law, we have to hire another teacher. So I just want to make you aware of that. We may be having to do that. But overall, we're looking very good in all of our areas. So that's the end of my report. If anyone has any questions.
Ms. Renier and then Ms. Phillips.
What is the state requirement on 4 through 6? Is it 25?
At 25.49, yes, ma'am.
25.49, so we have somebody approaching that. don't we? 25.67 in sixth grade at one of our schools.
At Pittard, yes, but it's over the whole average of the 4th through 6th grade, so their whole average is a 23.19. It doesn't break it down per individual grade, it breaks it down for those 3 grades.
For the 3 grades.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Well, but I do have a comment, I guess, looking at these numbers. When you look at one school who has a teacher, a class has 25, almost 26 children, 25 or 26 children in a class, and then another school has 16 in the comparable grade level, you have to be thinking about what the effects might be in that classroom.
And I think what you'll find is what makes it difficult when you start looking numbers is that often those classes that have the 16 in them may be in small schools, and so what happens if you pull one of those teachers is then you wind up being above.
Right.
My guess is that if we hired another teacher, probably it would not necessarily mean another classroom, because at this time of the year, what I find is principals are very reluctant to split children.
Right.
And so last year, I
Hard on
think
the
at
kids.
Hobgood, we had to hire in the middle of the year another teacher, but the decision was not to divide those children up into classroom, but just have an extra set of hands.
Did they do like team teaching or something?
Yeah. And then the other thing you get into at this time of the year is whether you can find quality folks.
Individuals. Mhm.
Yeah. Typically, if at the beginning of the year, if principals are needing another teacher, they're very quick to let me know about it.
Right.
What you'll hear this time of the year, and even after school starts, a week or two in, and there was one school, for example, that I kept contacting and watching and wondering why I didn't hear from the principal, and subsequently talked to that principal, and they just said that they really didn't want to put another teacher in because they weren't sure what they could find, and it's much easier sometimes for, and this is going to sound strange, but it's much easier sometimes for teachers to handle 1 or 2 students more than it is, and I'll use this term with the greatest respect, to have to babysit a teacher who may not be as qualified as what they need to be. And we've had that.
I agree with that, but I guess my point is that we have some people who have 10 more students than
That's
someone
right.
else.
That's right.
And that therefore the children may not be getting quite as much time with the teacher as these children over here. And it would be nice if we could balance it out. In some cases, I know probably the situation is there's no more classroom space as well.
Right.
So.
Ms. Phillips and then Ms. Smith.
My question for the classroom you were talking about, that was it a kindergarten classroom that you were talking about, Mr. Anderson? What grade classroom was that? I couldn't find it. Where your watch, where is it? Where is that? 20 point?
It said Irma Siegel, and the average for the K through 3 is
Okay, the K through
20.46.
3. Yeah. Now, if you did, when will you have? What is the reporting date for the state? Or does it? Or is there any particular date that is a reporting date where you have to have that number?
Well, the reporting date's every 20 days, but we would make that determination once we are notified from the school that we've had another child registered, and then we would have to go and hire that person.
Okay, so it's just whenever, if that child shows up. Okay, and then my next question is for you then, Dr. Gilbert. Are you predict then that they would not hire break up a class then?
Right.
That
I would almost bet on that.
Okay, all right.
I might be wrong, but I would just almost bet on that.
You know, my thought was if that's going to happen, if we have to break up a class, or if the principal determines that that's the choice that she feels is best for the children, then, you know, Christmas might be the time to do that.
Well, I think a couple of things are in play with that. One, and really and truly it goes back to what we were saying before, a lot of it depends on the quality teacher you get, and a lot of it depends on room. But knowing the schools, I would think at this time of the year probably what you would see is just an additional teacher in that grade level to help out.
Yeah, it's hard to break up classrooms this far into the year, isn't it?
Right, and it's also hard to get really. Our teachers are exceptional. Our teachers are absolutely exceptional, and I think that the pool of teachers that we have hired this year are just it's an outstanding pool. And as much collaboration as we do, and as much as support we give to new teachers, at this time of the year, sometimes it's really tough to find that quality teacher and to be able to come in the middle of the year and to pick up with where you've had a team of teachers working so closely together through their PLC work is really tough. So it's difficult to bring that other teacher on board and to have them separated out. Now, it may be a different ball game to have them with you, especially if you get a good quality teacher. But the other thing that's happened is we have to remember with the accountability, whatever that teacher's doing is impacting all those other teachers too. And so for many of our teachers and for many of our principals, they will say, if we reach that magic number, which can happen at any time of the year, they will say, give me another teacher, but they will not request that those classes be broken up so that you have that teacher totally independent and those kids totally independent. It's what this district has done, what the teachers have done, and the principals have done is they have a unity that I have not seen in many other school districts, and I've worked with a lot of school districts, and I cannot tell you how appreciative I am of the professional learning communities that have been formed and the work that they do together. So they can predict almost, they know what each other is teaching. And in the beginning, when there were concerns about breaking up the students by their skill level for intervention, you no longer hear that because they are so aware of what each other is doing. And so it's difficult to say, okay, we're going to pull 3 kids from each one of your classrooms and form another class over here that's going to be separate. And now, if that's what that principal deems and those teachers deem, then they're going to have my support to do that. But at this time of the year, I just don't see it happening.
That makes sense.
Ms. Smith.
I just want to confirm, it has to be a licensed teacher.
Right.
Okay, it cannot be a student teacher or an
No.
EA. Okay.
No. It has to be a licensed teacher, and it can happen any time during the year. So even if Siegel, even if Ms. Spencer said, I don't want another teacher, when it hits the number, I've got to say, you're getting another teacher.
Mr. Campbell and then Mrs. Rainier.
I think another thing we have to remember, too, when we're talking about dividing a class this time of the year, are the students as well as the parents. You know, my son's been in Ms. Johnson's room ever since the beginning of school, and I'm not ready to go to a new teacher. And that happens.
That's right.
And sometimes I get a little bit upset over that. I also noticed, Mr. Anderson, we've got in just 2 schools, I think, if I read this right, Black Fox and Cason Lane, who are down a little bit enrollment-wise as compared to where they were at the end of the school year last year. Could that be because of large 6th grade classes, perhaps?
It's a combination of different things. At Cason Lane, the big issue was they had a very large kindergarten class last year, which moved up to 1st grade, and you can see it is about 30 kids more in 1st grade this year than the 2 grades surrounding it. So
correct.
that was just one of those birth year glitches for that particular location. So I missed the boat by that one on 30 kids. And on Black Fox, it goes with the times of where the people are moving, where people are coming into the area, and you can look at their numbers there, and they're pretty consistent, except they have a drop in the 3rd grade configuration, and their 6th grade has held fairly strong. And they've been around 100 moving up into it, and they don't lose that many at that particular school. It's just that it's just not as strong in that area. That school does experience quite a few out-of-city residents that come into that school. And so I can look at that. That might be part of the reason.
Black Fox does?
Yes. Yeah.
And one of the things I know that Mr. Thompson talked with us about is that he was expecting, because we were expecting the numbers to be higher than some of the ones that wanted to come in, I think.
Yeah. One of the things is we hold off on accepting kindergartners from out of the city until we're sure we are covered with our own in-city kids. And Mr. Thompson made the decision, and I don't disagree with him at the time, was to not allow all of the children who wanted to come to the school, because we were thinking we were going to have a bigger kindergarten class at that school than we did. And so when he didn't let them I guess, matriculate to our schools, they ended up going to the other school which they were originally assigned. So he did hold off on some. We
And
did,
Black Fox is out of classrooms as far as adding, right?
right. So he
There's
was
some
being
things we
very
could do
careful.
with the money, but
It actually ended up being a prudent decision in the long run. You know, of course, we don't like the fact that it dropped a little bit, but it's still a good decision.
Ms. Renier?
Yes. Since you're on that track right now, which schools accept out-of-city students? I always thought it was Hopgood and Bradley, so now it's also Black Fox?
Yes, the ones that we have limited any out-of-city, any new out-of-city is at Scales, Pittard, Siegel, and Cason. Those are the 4 that we do not accept. The other ones have room.
The other
we
ones
accept
can.
them if they have room.
Okay.
Back years ago, it used to just be
Be.
pretty much Bradley and Hopgood. Right. When Scales was opened up, quite a few children came from the county into that school. And so we have what I call legacy children. They're there, and then their siblings are there, and we never want to remove a child from the path of which they've been. And so, once
they're
that,
grandfathered in?
right, they're grandfathered in.
Okay. How many years, where will that stop? I mean, are we close to 6th grade with those students?
They are already 6, but now
Sixth
they
grade
have
now.
siblings that were younger, and as long as they had a sibling in school, they would do it. It's dropping off some.
Okay.
And when you open up the next new school, it'll drop off tremendously.
Right. Well, that's because of what was said brought me to that question. My actual question that I had raised my hand about was, do you have an idea of kind of a average number of ins and outs over the holidays for the second semester? You know, I know that there quite often is a lot of transition at that time.
Yes, and fortunately, or unfortunately, there's not as much as it used to be.
Okay.
It used to be quite a bit. You could almost get a whole new influx of a whole new group of
Right.
of kids, but we do have some leave and some go. And it really depends on the school, because we find that some schools lose some students right after the holidays, but others gain. It depends on what's the popular area where they're moving into is where we gain those students. It really hasn't been as much, and I can look at last year's. I have last year's numbers with me, and if you give me a minute, I'll look it up. If you have any other questions, I'll see what it did right after the holiday.
Well, that's okay. I just thought maybe you are so smart that you probably knew this already. I don't mean for you to have to look it up.
Oh, Miss Rainier.
I just thought you might have a projection.
Ms. Phillips and then Mrs. Smith.
Mine's on a little different tack, looking at the attendance report and seeing we're at, what, is it 95%? Typically, I talk about this in December, but since we're not having a meeting this December, I know we're doing a lot. I'd like to hear a little bit about what we're doing. The flu season is right around the corner, keeping the kids in school, flu shots. What's going on with that?
Well, you're right, and we are down this month, which, and usually our attendance is much greater, which is, for some school districts, this would be a good attendance rate. We're seeing sniffles, we're seeing bad colds, we're seeing normal things. A few weeks ago, we saw strep throat. So right now, I haven't heard of any influx of any kind of major disease out there, and I'm looking at the instruction team because they're in the schools every day. But we are seeing some more sniffles. I think that as far as attendance, probably it's just your typical run-of-the-mill sickness. Obviously, with the mobile health clinic, that has helped quite a bit. We also are forming, of course, we have the health department that we have a tremendous partnership with. So I think that has helped. And I think that we have offered vaccinations to staff through the mobile health unit. And you may want to address that, Mr. Anderson, since coordinated school health comes under you. But as far as seeing any unusual kinds of illnesses, I don't know that your nurses have seen.
I have not received any reports from our nursing staff that we've had any, and over a 95.8. Last year at this time we were at 96.2, so we're really not that much difference.
I guess what I was really wondering, Mr. Anderson and Dr. Gilbert, does the mobile health unit, does staff give children flu vaccines through that? Do they get flu vaccines? Are they offered to the children?
we, as a school system, we are not the provider of that. They can get those things arranged through the mobile health unit when they send them to their primary care physician.
Okay.
But we don't actually give the shots.
Okay. All right. So that's what I was wondering. Is there a push or a way for the kids to, is that offered to them in any way is what I was really wondering.
I don't think so. Is there, Gary?
No, I don't believe we are doing it. That we just do it through the
I mean offer to their parents,
Okay.
for their child is what I was wondering. So it might be helpful.
Well, we can take a look at it.
Dr. Brown might be able to help us with that one.
We'll have to talk about that.
Okay.
There's a lot of risk involved that I'm not sure the city schools need to be involved in. So.
Mr. Anderson, can you tell me a little bit about the payment? If people from out of the city come into the schools, how's that subsidized?
If it's a county student and they come into the school system, the state money follows the child. So we receive a little over $4,000 per student from state money. We also receive a share of the total county monies that are collected in sales tax and property tax, and that hovers around 15%. So when every 15% of the total collection, so every time a student comes in, it changes the ratio very slightly. So basically what you're looking at is between $4,000 and $5,000 for a city student for a county student to come into the city.
And what do we accept people from out of county?
There's a very few that are out of county, and they do have a tuition charge on them that we collect. And that was established through board policy a couple years ago. I think it's like $3,000 now that we get.
Don't we charge county students?
No, ma'am.
No.
Okay.
Are there any more questions for Mr. Anderson about attendance? Hearing none, other business. Other than no meetings in December, policy or board meeting?
I do have a question. Another question for Mr. Anderson. I drove by Hobgood today, and I wanted to get a status update on their physical plant.
Okay, it is the Hobgood addition, the Phase 2, the classrooms, as you know, are completed. Phase 2 is under construction, and it is moving along on schedule. They do anticipate having it completed on time and take over the cafeteria area right after TCAP, so they can convert that and convert the hallway that leads out to that at that time. So they should be completed on schedule, which is for the start of school for next school year. Once they get it under cover, then things move real quickly.
Is there any other business that needs to come before us or anything you want on the agenda for the next meeting?
I think as a board, we would like to wish everybody a happy holiday season, a Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year, and stay out of trouble.
That's asking a lot, but
Maybe a status update on the land purchase for the school.
we'll put that on the, Mrs. Ridley, I know she's taking all that good stuff down. If there are no more questions or comments, we will consider our meeting adjourned.
Pipers piping, 10 ladies dancing, 11 lords a-leaping, 12 drummers drumming. Well, actually, I kept one of the maids a-milking and sent them back collect. I wrote my true love, we are through, love, and I said, it's so